Good evening. It is 6:07. We have a quorum with all members of council present, and we are going to start the workshop session of our meeting. Item number one is Regional Connected Vehicle Program presentation by Aerotropolis Atlanta Community Improvement District Executive Director, Gerald McDowell. Mr. McDowell, is he here?
I am.
Well, good evening to you.
Good evening to all of you. To Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity to come before you this evening to talk about the Regional Connected Vehicle Program. This was actually a project that the CIDs brought to our partner cities back in the fall of 2018 when we had a meeting with all our fire chiefs to discuss a similar project to install this technology so that our emergency vehicles would be able to have priority whenever they were going through an interchange. That was the fall of 2018. Then in the summer of 2019, the Atlanta Regional Commission convened a meeting, and we were invited to that meeting because they learned of our interest in this project. And so we were invited to a meeting where the Atlanta Regional Commission Chair, Carrie Armstrong, introduced this idea of connecting 1,000 intersections across the region, and with the goal of connecting all these intersections to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. So we participated in that meeting in the summer of 2019. We came from that meeting and we met with all our cities and talked about the program and what the Atlanta Regional Commission wanted to do. At that time, there was no funding that was available to pay for this. And so the participation was to ask each city to pay for the intersections that were located within their jurisdictions. However, in the early part of 20, Georgia Department of Transportation secured some funding for this particular project. Each intersection to implement and to install this technology, it would cost $10,000 per intersection. And so the Georgia Department of Transportation was able to secure 80% of the funds to pay for that cost, and came back to the locals and asked for the locals to provide a 20% match. Since the community improvement districts had initiated this idea with our partners back in the fall of 2020, our cities were, of course, yourselves, along with the cities of South Fulton, East Point, and Hapeville. We wanted to make sure that our partners did not get left out of this regional initiative, and so the CIDs will be offering to pay 20% of your match, which will lower your cost. The 20% that the GDOT is looking for from you, it will lower that down to just 16% from you, and we'll pay the difference. Also, to expedite the process, the CIDs have agreed to receive the invoice from Georgia Department of Transportation, and we will pay the invoice in full. And then we would turn around and invoice the cities for the 16% of the local match when this project gets up and running. In a nutshell, what the project involves would be GDOT would be managing this project and would put out an RFP to select a vendor to install equipment at intersections. And this equipment will allow for advanced technology that's already been deployed in the marketplace to increase and to allow better phasing and timing of our traffic signals. It also will be able to broadcast messages out to vehicles that have the technology installed within those vehicles. And then the part that we were most interested in the fall of 2018, it will provide the technology to allow emergency vehicles to have priority whenever those vehicles were traveling through an intersection. It also would provide priority to transit vehicles as well as freight vehicles. So a signal priority would be provided to those. And then there are multiple other applications that a jurisdiction would be able to implement at these intersections using smart city technology and other technologies as it comes available. So what you have before you is a description of the regional connected vehicle program. You also have the memorandum of understanding that would be executed between the city and the Georgia Department of Transportation. And also you have a breakdown of the intersections that would fall within College Park. In total, there are approximately 57 intersections throughout our 4 cities, with 18 of those intersections being located in College Park. So the 16% match for College Park would come to about $28,800, and that invoice would not come out for another couple of months until the RFP process is completed, a vendor is selected, and then we'll be invoiced in a couple of months, and then we'll turn around and invoice the city. And then in order for the city to participate in this regional connected vehicle program, this invoice would be, this MOU would need to be executed. I would like to make you aware that we've already presented to the city of South Fulton, who has approved to execute the MOU. We have a meeting with the city of Hapeville on their, this will be on their consent agenda for tomorrow night at their council meeting. And we are on the East Point agenda for the first meeting that they have in July as well. So we've made our rounds to the other cities, and now we're coming before you this evening to see if you have any questions about your participation.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
All right, Councilman Clay.
I have several. First off, you identified or listed that there were 18 sites in College Park. But on your map, you only show 17 sites. And I think you are missing a site at Lee Street and the East Main Street traffic light. That is missing from the map.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that that is the 18th site that you're accounting for.
I will, we'll update that and confirm that for you, sir. But
Yeah, that's more of a comment than a question, because I'm sure you don't know whether that specific traffic light is in there or not, but it should be.
Right.
And if it's not, and there's some other that's missing, then it's not 18 anymore, it's a different number. And then that would need to be looked at. The second thing I had is, when I read the memorandum of understanding, it appears that it is, that we are responsible for the ongoing maintenance of this various equipment. Is that correct?
No, that would be the Georgia Department of Transportation.
No, that's not the way I read it. Let me tell you why I said that. Let me see if I can find the page. Hold on just a second here. And
I believe it's packet page 19.
yes, it's packet page 19, item 5.
Mm-hmm.
What is the estimated cost of ongoing maintenance? And it says there that all maintenance responsibilities of the local government shall be performed consistent with department standards. So prior to that, it said the local government shall be responsible for the continual maintenance and operation of all components and technology constructed and installed as part of the project. And I asked city manager if the city attorney had reviewed this, and he said no, and that it wasn't necessary because we didn't have to make a decision on it tonight.
That's right, correct. That's correct. Yeah, so let me get clarification on that, because it was my understanding that in this initial deployment that the funds that would be paid covers a number of years for this project. And that there would be no additional costs for local governments, but let me get clarification for you for that.
Okay, but you do understand that's not what the agreement says.
I'm looking at that now, yes. So I have that circled and I will follow up with you when I get an answer to that.
And I would add that I'm very in favor of the project. I think it will be beneficial to all concerned. So my comments aren't really relating to the fact that I don't think it's a good idea.
I understand. I'll get clarification for you.
Okay, that's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none.
I have one quick question. I'm
okay,
sorry.
Councilman Allen.
I have myself muted. Do you have to have all cities involved to move ahead with the program, or can it be 2 cities or 3 cities decide to do it and the other one do not, or how does that work?
The short answer is no. They do not have to have all the cities
Okay.
to participate to move forward. So the answer to that question is no. However, what that does is it defeats the purpose for the 1,000 intersections, because if you think about it, if you have a vehicle that's traveling along these routes, once it gets to a city that is not participating, all of a sudden that technology is not available. That's all that would mean. But no, GDOT will once they have gotten all the MOUs back from the cities that are going to be participating, they will move forward with the project.
But Gerald, that also would be a disadvantage to the city that hadn't participated, because not only would it to slow down the through traveler, but it would create a huge backlog or traffic jam potentially in that city at that light that wasn't properly coordinated.
That's correct, and that's why the CIDs, we recognize the importance that if this is what's going to be a regional project, then we wanted to bring some funds to the table to help offset some of the costs for each one of our partners, and so that's why we're bringing funds to the table as well, to encourage you to participate.
And that is much appreciated. We both said the same thing there. Yes, much appreciated. I do think this is a important step for just regional improvements and public safety. It seems to me that if we can make this work, and the delayed invoices is helpful in that, as we look out and see how the economy improves.
Correct. Yes.
That aspect of it is certainly helpful as well. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I have a quick question, Gerald. I'm looking at your map on package page 15.
Yes.
And I don't see Old National and Sullivan, and I don't see Camp Creek, but I'm real concerned about Old National and Sullivan if we're synchronizing lights. Is that part of the city of South Fulton, or are they just not part of this intersections that you?
In terms of Camp Creek, where you stop on Camp Creek is where East Point and South Fulton will pick up.
Okay. I'm mostly concerned about Old National though, because believe it or not, that light is what that light at Garvey and that light at Sullivan is what I'm told affects the traffic. Are they part of the study?
What are those streets again?
Are you talking about Old National and Godby, Councilman?
Yeah. The light at Old National and Garvey and the light at Sullivan is what I'm told used to be the reason, but that traffic was backing up last summer.
Right.
Remember the backup?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
That's
see
a
this
serious
part of that.
backup.
I don't see this as part of affecting approving that.
Okay. I'll make a note of this. So give me those streets again. Old National and Garvey. What was the second one?
Old National and Sullivan.
Old National and Sullivan.
And while we're on Old National, I mean, the interchange at Old National and 285
Right.
is one that I at least have seen on multiple occasions where if law enforcement support is needed from other jurisdictions, they're coming off of that interchange. And I actually saw that happen last week. So that area, I absolutely concur with Councilman Gay, really does need to be part of any analysis.
Okay,
I suspect, Mayor, that and Councilman Gay, that part of that comes from the fact that originally wasn't this plan, Gerald, designed to facilitate people getting to the airport
that's correct.
and people getting from the, as I recall, from the north side to the south side and the south side to the north side.
That's correct.
And because where Old National and Godby Road is located, they're not in that path, I'm guessing. I'm just making a guess at this point.
But for
That
people
doesn't mean
coming-
it shouldn't be addressed. I totally agree with Councilman Gay
Well,
and the mayor that that is a terrible traffic jam, both at 285 and and at Godby and Old National.
I made note of those intersections. Now, I do know back in the fall of 2018, when we were looking at this with our partners, with our city partners, we had over 130 or 40 different intersections identified. Let me go back and see if these intersections were part of that list, and see if they're not part of this plan, what it would take to incorporate those additional intersections. And so when I follow up with you on those other questions, I'll have a response to that as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
Nope.
All right.
Madam
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
if I may, I'd appreciate any general consensus to proceed in some way. There
I
some
was
favorable
just
comments.
headed that way.
Okay, I apologize. We think alike.
But that consensus, as far as I'm concerned, is dependent on the answer to the question that I asked about what the ongoing maintenance is,
Of course.
because we're in a difficult economic situation right now. And if you were to tell me that it's going to cost $100,000 of ongoing maintenance, as much as I love this project, I'd have some serious questions about that.
And if I may, ladies
So-
and gentlemen,
This should not be considered approval.
no, consensus to proceed with coming back with a packet of considerations, including the agreement, the memorandum of understanding, to A, be reviewed by legal counsel, and B, to outline a summary of what the cost considerations would be. So this would be brought back to the body for respective consideration in that regard. My suggestion for any consensus is to give us the ability to work collaboratively with the community improvement districts to that
That's
effect.
fine.
Would we be able to get the answers to the questions that we've asked tonight by the end of
Yes,
the week?
I would encourage Mr. McDowell to provide an email update to that effect as quickly as possible, enabling us to proceed in a productive fashion, as I've outlined.
That's still
So-
not going to enable us to sign the agreement because
No.
it hasn't been reviewed by legal.
Right.
No, that will
But it-
come back later, of course.
But for at least getting the questions answered, if the answer is we are going to be responsible for $100,000 worth of maintenance on these on this technology, then do we really need
Yeah,
legal to take a look at it? I mean, if we can get those questions by the end of the week, I don't think that would be exceptionally difficult, right, Mr. McDowell? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I think
No,
Okay.
we've had many conversations with GDOT about this. We should be able to get those responses quickly.
perfect. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Oh, of course, always good to see you guys.
Always a pleasure. Well, you see us, but I don't see you.
I don't know why. I'm all dressed up.
Well, maybe next time. Well, thank you so much. Take care.
Of course.
All right. Item number 2 is resumption of utility disconnections and temporary payment arrangements. Ms. Flord Bradley or Mr. Moore, which one of you is going to head this one up?
I'll kick it off, Madam Mayor and council members. And this is simply an opportunity for council to offer feedback relative to resumption of utility disconnections and temporary pay arrangements. So as you know, over the last couple of weeks, we began transitional resumption of normal operations here at City Hall, including the ability for people to come in and take care of utility bill payments and that. And this goes back to direction having been offered back in late March and into April relative to ceasing the disconnection activity. And of course, as we've been provided updates relative to financial arrears, we have to get to a place in which we can timely resume normal activities in this regard. So a couple of suggestions both Althea Lloyd Bradley and myself have come up with, and that includes disconnections and late fees to resume for all late payments beginning Monday, August 3rd. this is fairly consistent or a little bit better for customers than what we initially envisioned back in April when we first initiated this accommodation, as well as to provide an opportunity for council to provide a pay arrangements for either 60 to 90 days. Thea and I were back and forth in this regard a little bit, and we simply decided to give Mayor and City Council an opportunity to chime in respectively. So again, nothing more than to seek council consensus, as it were, relative to getting back to normalcy in this regard, as we absolutely must.
All right, I've got a question in regard to the disconnections beginning Monday, August 3rd. At what point are we letting people know that, and how are we letting people know that?
Well, after consensus this evening, we'll begin an educational process. One of the reasons we thought August 3rd would be good, that's a good 45-day window plus to create an educational process, casting the net, if you will, throughout the community, that these opportunities will resume, number one. Number two, for those who are in more serious arrears than others, we thought that that would be adequate enough time to get to a place in which we can create a payment plan arrangement based on those 60 or 90-day considerations I've just outlined.
Okay, so again, how are we letting people know?
We will be placing information on the utility bill as well as the website, as well as when they call in, we'll allow them to, we'll basically provide them with the information as far as resumption of the utility services for those that do not pay in a timely manner.
Can we get a separate insert into the utility bill? I know that that 3-line blurb on the bill is easily missed. If we do something like bright, bold, different color paper even, notice if you have arrears, you need to call and set up a payment plan or come in, something. Because what I don't want is for people who are already in difficult circumstances to somehow not be made aware of this. So I think that if it's possible to get a separate insert,
Yes.
that would be much, much better than that 3-line
Okay.
on the
We
bill.
can do that.
Agreed.
I
think that's a must.
assume,
I think you've got to have a separate thing. Separate
yeah,
insert.
I totally agree. And I'm assuming that the 60 or 90-day repayment interval would begin on August 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes, it
That's
will.
correct.
So that's when the plan would be in effect. So if we get it into the bill as soon as possible, people will have at least, let's say, a month of notification.
Correct.
Or, well, maybe half a month.
I think the June bills have already gone out, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
Not all of them, not
Okay.
yet. No.
Okay.
we
so
have-
we'll catch some of the June,
Correct.
and that's why I say it'll probably be. You'll catch by the end of July. You'll have everybody.
Correct.
I don't see the 90-day on this form. I see 60-day, but not 90.
Well,
Go to packet page 29.
it's not 90. We're basically requesting recommendation as far as 60 or 90. We won't go with 60 and 90. It's either 60 or 90. That's how we want it. We want one set plan. So
Well,
there's no confusion. So we're asking the council to either approve the 60-day or the 90-day.
well, how long were we giving them relief for COVID? 30 or 60 or 90 days? How long did we suspend disconnection? Was it 30 days, 60 or 90?
it's been since mid-March.
Yes.
So that's
So we-
90.
It's been nearly 3 months already.
hmm
So for me, I would like a 90-day to match the amount of the relief. 90
Yeah,
days.
I would agree with that because
was leaning towards
I
90
don't think
myself.
our people can. There's no point in creating something that people can't have a reasonable chance of making.
Don't set people up for failure.
Right. And
I agree, and
um,
you might have another flyer. You might be able to get 2 flyers out in 90 days.
well, we're not
No,
talking
no,
about.
no, no, no. I think what we're saying is that starting August 3rd, you would have 90 days to catch up as opposed to 60 days.
Right, but then
Right.
they have another, they can come in. I don't know. Well, I don't know if that flyer, they're gonna have to come in before that to set the agreement. Okay.
Right.
You're-
Like you would have to have your agreement set up before
August.
August 3rd and start
Right.
paying on it, or else you would be disconnected. But if you
Right.
and correct me if I am wrong, Ms. Floyd Bradley or Mr. Moore, but if you don't have anything in place August 3rd and you haven't made any arrangements, then you would be cut off. But we're going to let people.
With a door tag initially. So
Okay.
I didn't
but-
hear Althea.
you'd be notified with a door tag as far as if you're.
Okay. Okay.
We notify the customers before we disconnect them.
Could you get a little closer to the mic, please?
Can you hear me now?
Sounds
Better.
like you're in a
It sounds like you're in
a
a long
tunnel.
tunnel.
or something. Yep.
Oh, really? Sorry. I don't know what's going on with the mic. Is that better?
Yes.
That's excellent.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing now, just keep doing it.
I turned the volume up, I think. That's about it.
Oh, good. Okay. I think the other issue is that, or not an issue, but the other fact is, I believe Georgia Power is going to start reinitiating disconnects mid-July, if I
That is
remember right.
correct.
Yes,
That's
July
correct, sir.
15th.
Yep, so we would be 3 weeks or so later. Based
Right.
on August 3rd.
So it sounds like we're zeroing in on 90 days. Get the flyers out as quick as we can. People should have a flyer, but at least by the middle of July. That gives them a couple weeks to come in and set up a payment plan. 90-day payment plan. Is that it?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Gay, I thought it looked like you.
I was
wanted to say
just,
something.
thank you. I was just asking, is this for commercial too? Commercial.
Yes, sir.
So they could do 90 days too?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Could we put a flyer on the door where people come in City Hall where they would also be able to see it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we can
One
put
other thing, are we going to have the requirement that we've had before, that if you're on a payment plan, you at least have to be paying more than your monthly bill?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The third bullet point there says that customers with payment arrangements are required to pay the agreed upon monthly installment in addition to paying their monthly utility charges in full.
Right. I
So-
just want to make sure we have consensus on that point.
Oh, yes. That was my understanding. Is that
Fine.
the consensus of the body?
I agree.
All right. Councilman Taylor, anything to add?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
All right. So I think we've got direction there.
Very well, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you.
Thank
All right. Item number 3 is consideration of a memorandum of understanding between the City of College Park and J-Pods, a personal rapid transit system that moves people and vehicles hanging from overhead rails.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Mayor Broom, City Council members. My name is Alta Lopes, and I would like to introduce you to Georgia Mobility. J-Pods are transit system partners in consideration for the Memo of Understanding, as you just mentioned. Again, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to be here today. My name is Alta Lopes, as I suggested a little while ago, and I'm one of the founding members of Georgia Mobility. I have over 20 years of banking and finance experience. Today, I have 3 of my colleagues that are joining me. JT Williams, he's the chairman of Georgia Mobility. JT has developed over 16,000 acres of land in both Georgia and Florida in the past 16 years, as well as JT has advised 11 governors on numerous transportation projects. Next, we have Ray McClendon, our director. Ray is an aficionado, I should say, of public-private partnership, and also he's a financing strategist. And we have Jim Lowe, who's our premier design and engineering specialist. Jim focuses on major infrastructure projects. Now, a little bit about J-Pods. We are a transit development firm. Our efforts is that we focus on implementation and installation of transit systems by way of managing the operations. We also manage entitlements, design. We also focus on publicity, financing, construction, and to implement the project. Georgia Mobility does not own the technology. However, we utilize technology on behalf of our transit partners that we choose to work with as JPODs. Like a real estate developer, we do not own the assets. We basically we can choose to sell the assets, that is, my apologies. Georgia Mobility combines transportation along with public-private partnerships expertise, capital markets experiences to assist state and local jurisdictions in solving transit problems. We do it efficiently, we do it safely, sustainable, and cost effective. That's just a little bit about who JPODs is, my team. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jim Lowe, who will be discussing the engineering portion of this program. Thank you, and we'll look forward to questions shortly.
Good evening, this is Jim Lowe. I don't know if you got my video or not. Can I turn on video, or is that controlled somewhere else?
You can turn on your video. You should be able to.
Well,
Lower left-hand corner, Jim.
yeah, for some reason, it's not coming up on mine, Council.
Did he just knock himself off?
Well, maybe.
Oh, no, he's still
I
there.
moved him,
Well-
I moved him over now so
Okay.
that he can show his
Oh,
video.
there it is. Oh, great. Thank you. Yes. Okay. I just want to say hello in person. I'm Jim Lowe, and I've had the pleasure of working with the City of College Park on a number of different occasions in different capacities. I'm excited to be here tonight. Previously, Mayor, I worked closely with the council, mayor, and staff in the conceptual planning of Airport City. Did that for about 2 years with the group AAC Group. And prior to that, was the design engineer for a number of the hotel complexes across the street at GICC, as well as the parking deck and some of the infrastructure around there. So happy to be here tonight in a work session and talking about JPODs in our system. I don't know if you have the handout that we sent you, but there's a couple of graphics on this handout that show a really nice picture. On page 2, and I think maybe page 4, it shows the structure of our JPOD system. It is a canopy of solar panels with rails or if you will, tracks under the canopy of solar panels, and the actual cars themselves are suspended from the rail. So the impact on the ground is nothing more than a post or a column that is inserted into the ground. The operations of the JPOD system is very, very similar to Uber or a Lyft in concept. You will take your phone, you will hit the JPOD app, and you will put in the destination you want to go. You'll be at the station. An individual car will be waiting for you. The cars are about the size, at least the interior is about the size of a typical passenger car. So it's 4, maybe 5 people, maybe 4 adults and a child or something like that. It's not a bus. It's not a mass transit kind of feel. It's an individual feel. And one of the unique things that's very timely in the situation we're all in with COVID is that we have the ability to disinfect the cars before the next rider gets in. And we'll do that through some infrared technology that will take about 20 or 30 seconds or so. Once you get into the car, you've got your destination, you're off, and you do not stop until you reach your destination. You don't have to stop at traffic lights. You don't have to stop at intersections. You're not in a congested state. You're in an autonomous car that is traveling along a rail system. It is talking to the other cars, and it's going, you know, in the urban areas, it's probably doing around 35 miles an hour, maybe 40 miles an hour, give or take. When we get further outside, maybe on an interstate situation, it can certainly be doing in the 80 miles an hour or so in those areas. So it's a really unique packaging of existing technologies. There's really nothing new that we're proposing that is part of JPODs. The cellular technology is the same that exists with Uber. Solar panels and the solar wire, the electrical wiring and the battery storage and all kind of things like that are very, very common. The disinfection, if you will, is a pretty straightforward process. It's all available. The autonomous nature of the vehicle is very similar to what you see in cars today. So we're just taking all that, J-PODS is taking all that and putting that together in a new package that is called the Personal Rapid Transit System. And the partnership we need with the city of College Park is pretty obvious. It's a public infrastructure, but it's privately owned. So there's got to be a public overlap of this. And that comes in with the rights of way or where this is located. We love College Park for a number of different reasons, and it was specifically chosen by a group of people studying options around the United States. And obviously the connection to the airport, the connection to potential connection to the MARTA station, potential connection to the GICC, the arena, the hotel complex, maybe even the Delta lot, maybe some of the park and ride lots. There's a number of different things that are just really unique right here in a small area. And our first phase, we don't call it a test track, we call it a first phase because a lot of the components have already been tested. We just need it on a larger commercial scale. Would be about 1 mile to 2 miles in rough configuration. So we're excited about that. We have an MOU that's been submitted, and JT's going to talk about that in a second. And we just need the ability to move forward with our planning. And to do that, we need a MOU executed and discussed with the city. So JT, if I could turn it over to you.
Okay, very good. Am I supposed to punch something to get the video? Or just talk? I don't see a way to turn my video on, but let's see, participants. Wait. Start video.
Laura, there you go.
There it is. I think my light's on, Ambrose, now.
Yes, we can see you, JT.
And okay, I can't see me, but I don't need to. I know who I am. I'm delighted to present this to you. And you can see on my screen, I see some of the pods hanging underneath the track. But let me just mention a little bit about my history in transportation. For the last 17 years, I've been chairman of Greta's transportation projects. And I've done that, and I've got 3 more years to go. But before I forget it, Terrence, we should probably talk about the old National Highway a little bit. Because that's going to take more than just street lights to solve that problem. And but I'll be glad to help if you want me to talk with ARC and GDOT, and we can present that at one of they meet with me. Their staff meets with me every 3 months to talk about the feasibility of various projects involving state or federal funding, and I'll be glad to help in that area. Okay, that was my other hat. Let me go back now to. J-PODS. Georgia Mobility selected J-PODS because we checked kind of everything that's out there today, and we think J-PODS is the best choice. Their 2 leaders are West Point graduates. Charles Fletcher is the chairman, and he's a retired Army Major General. He had a distinguished military record, was commanded general in the invasion of Iraq. Bill James is the CEO. He commanded the infantry company, and they graduated from West Point with honors in physics, chemistry, and engineering. And they have a patent, the only one that has a real patent in this whole process. So we thought they were the best choice. We've contracted with them to provide that for you. In the MOU itself, you have copies of that, so I won't bore you with the reading of it, but I will just hit some of the highlights. Because in addition of providing the rapid transit, the pods, J-Pods has agreed to provide 2,000 new jobs in College Park. And that'll include the manufacturing of most of these various things, the pods, the tracks, various parts of this network. And it won't cost the city anything, not asking for any concessions or anything else. The MOU is just intended in general terms to talk about a future agreement. It will not be binding. It says very clearly it's not a binding agreement. It's just kind of a letter of intent that will open the door for J-Pods and us to finalize the financing for it. It'll be privately funded totally. It confirms that the city's interested in talking with us about that. This is not to solve all the problems by any means. This is just one other method of providing mass transit in the Metro Atlanta area and in College Park. It's one of the things that Greta, that I serve on with the express buses, this virus that we're all concerned with had been devastating to mass transit. In the buses, January at our 100% capacity ridership, and then it started by April, it was down to 6% of what we normally have. So we agreed to make it free. Don't charge anybody, just try to let them ride the buses. It stayed at 6%. When everything opened back up, we thought, well, surely with no cost, it's going to really rise up. And it did rise up 1%. Only 7% now ride those buses. Well, that's because people understand a lot better than I do and others that when you're sitting close to somebody, they may have a bad cold and you catch the cold. They may have the flu and you get the flu. They may have the virus and you get the virus. So we think for the long term, people are going to be more educated in that area. And that's why J-Pods has agreed to disinfect that whole facility. And even on Uber, you're not sure about the driver. Well, in this case, in J-Pods, the user of it will determine everybody that rides in that pod. It'd be just like his private vehicle. And so that's, let's see, the franchise agreement is something that the MOU would kind of open that up to for discussions between us and College Park. And that in that second page on the MOU, which starts off paragraph 8, is kind of the key. That's when the city, it just says the city is interested in seeing us come up with a solution based on these representations, that we would be 100% financed, privately financed, solar powered, high capacity, operating 24/7. Will provide employment opportunities for residents in College Park and other areas in this area. For those 2,000 new jobs without costing anything from government. And it will free up some ground space needed for parking. It's pure green energy project, be environmentally friendly, and we'll be responsible fully for operating and maintaining it. And in exchange, we'll pay to the city 5% of our gross revenue earned from those operations within the city. And then item 10 says that we'll plan, construct, and put in operation that small project, pilot route that Jim talked about, 1 to 2 miles. And that would be located in an area that after discussions with the city, we want it to be the right place for you. And so we'll not designate it at this point, but leave that open and have discussions about where that should go. Madam Mayor, I think that kind of covers that section. Do we have any questions?
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Any questions?
Madam Mayor, I had some questions. Before the meeting, I got them answered. I guess the only thing I have left to ask is what kind of time frame are we talking about, JT?
Well, it would probably, then you mean to be operational, probably a year. And that's what they're telling us. But if it depends on how soon we can get the franchise agreement, they'll tie everything down. But now before we wrote the MOU, we like that to be adopted as soon as we can, because there's no risk involved. Your attorney would check that out, of course, thoroughly, no obligation at all. But once that's signed, hopefully within 30 days from that, and as far as the timetable, 30 days later, we can finalize the financing, private financing for it, all of it, the project, and then move to that franchise agreement. Then to construct all of that, the manufacturing of it, get it in place and constructed, J-POD is telling us it'll be about 1 year from that point. So a year to a year, 3 months, maybe. That's what we would hope.
And when you say a year to year and 3 months, that would be, first off, you have a factory that can make this.
No, we want to build the factory, but it'll be easy. We can get some existing warehouses, that sort of thing, and go in and start constructing. Now Jim would be a better one to ask about, because the engineering design of that, he'll be the quarterback for all the engineering. He's our engineering partner.
When we had, there was a predecessor project, which I don't want to go into at this point.
Good.
But that project, I agree with you. I don't think there were any technological breakthroughs that had to be made. The issue, you've got a big system integration project, is what it boils down to. And one of the questions I had asked was switching, whether switching would, and you talked about initial 1 to 2 mile of a demonstration facility. I assume that's what you're talking about, is the thing that would be built in a year and 3 months or so. Is that correct?
That's correct. And as Jim pointed out, that we're going to call that phase 1, because it's not going to be a track that'll be abandoned later on. It'll be the first phase of where we would want to go for the entire
right.
College Park.
So the system integration challenges are going to occur when you start getting into the dynamics of allocating cars, storing cars in locations along the route where they can be switched onto the track, and then the switching. One of the questions I'd asked was on switching, the switching issue, to be able to go off to a different track in a different direction and that kind of thing. And those problems, of course, won't occur with that first 2 mile, because it'll just be, I assume, a straight run. I mean, not straight, but it'll be going from here to there, and that's it. So
that's a good question, but Jim may have that answer. I talked to Bill James today about that, and he said there would be switching in that first phase. I don't know what.
There will be some switching. Well, that's good. That makes me feel better.
Okay.
But there will be, you've got a simulation issue. You've got to simulate the dynamics of how you allocate cars, while you handle things at rush hour, how you get the cars to the place. For example, if the line were go over to the arena, for example, Well,
Uh-huh.
you'd want to be able to, when the arena lets out, you would want to be able to have a whole bunch of cars at some kind of a storage location near the arena
Right.
that could be jumped onto the track and carry. And you need to get the cars there anticipating that
Uh-huh.
that is going
Mhm.
to happen. So
Yes.
that's why I'm glad to hear you've got a logistics guy, very experienced logistic guy on your staff.
Yes.
But I just have a hard time believing realistically that this thing can be available in a year and a quarter from when we sign a MOU. And I wonder how long will it be before we actually have people can go from, let's say, near the MARTA station in College Park over to the arena? How long would it be before that could actually be implemented? Do you guys have any feel of that?
Hey, Jim?
Yeah, so Councilman Clay, I think probably the best thing to do is let me put together some sort of timeline of events because to your point, we've got a lot to do. We've got geotechnical work, we've got design work, we've got manufacturing, we've got construction, we've got testing. So let me put that together. We have had preliminary conversations to address that one question, and the answer we got back and the analysis was about 1.5 years. But let me get you a little more detail on that because that does sound like a pretty quick turnaround to me as well.
Yeah, well, you're getting the pessimistic engineer view from me, having lived through a lot of big projects. But I don't want you to interpret that as that I'm not excited about the project, and that I think it is potentially a great solution for linking Airport City to the Gateway Center, to downtown College Park, to Old National, the whole area, and on, of course, to the airport. And then on the other side of the airport as it expands. So this whole
Right.
area could be networked with this. You don't have to build a new road. It
Right.
takes up a small footprint. With solar cell efficiency today, you probably can do what you're talking about with the canopy. I haven't done the calculations, mind you, but I would believe that that's the case. So I'm totally excited about the project, but I think it's going to take longer than what's being portrayed now. And I personally would be in favor of signing an MOU, but I just want to make sure we have the right expectations, that we set the right expectations on the project.
I also want to,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Councilman Allen.
Oh, I was just going to say, the question I have is, I don't know if you have a price point yet or have thought about a price point. You know, if you price yourself out of the market and you charge too much, you're just going to have this hanging up there with nobody using it. So I didn't know if you had a thought of how much you would charge, if it's going to be per person or per car, or how that's going to go. Have you thought about that at all? I'm sure.
We have, let's certainly have. Now, the cost of installing it is only about 10% what it is for heavy rail. This is the cheapest installation from buses, even cars, light rail, anything. It's extremely inexpensive relatively. It's not dirt cheap either, but it's on a per mile basis, it's about $10 million per mile compared to 300 million per mile on a heavy rail, 100 and something million per mile on light rail. But the cost to the user for the pod itself would be comparable to a Uber, about the same cost. Does that help set that, Mr. Allen?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. I'm concerned about how this links in. I mean, have there been any discussions with the Aerotropolis CIDs?
Yes, with Gerald McDowell. I don't know if he's still here or not, but I've worked with Gerald in a number of projects over the years, and I have great respect for him. And
Have there been any conversations though? Because I know the Aerotropolis CIDs have been working toward a vision of personal rapid transit in the region. So I
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't want to do anything that wouldn't complement that.
Sure, I agree fully. And Gerald and I talked about it a few weeks ago, in discussing it, and he thinks this, if he is, I think, wanting to have some kind of a study, but realizing that the study he thinks is going to pop, that what will pop up out of it is JPODs. And that was within 2 weeks ago. But Ray and I both have met with him one time, and now met with him a time or two before. But that's certainly a good question. And again, the MOU, if we had our druthers and to get to moving on it, we would hope that whenever you're comfortable, that Mayor, you and the City Council would adopt this in principle, and authorize the mayor to sign the MOU after it's approved by the city attorney. That kind of summarizes it. Whatever it takes to get to that point, we'd like to furnish you with all the information you need. But that would get us then moving to come to something that would be a final project, which is a final document, which is the franchise agreement. And there's no risk and no obligation until that franchise agreement comes back, public hearing, approved by you and the city council.
I want assurances that this is something that is going to be something that is embraced by our regional partners. Because
Sure.
I don't want us having, transit that's not translatable, I guess, to the rest of the region.
Sure.
The idea is that we make this an area where transit is streamlined, efficient, and state of the art. I mean, I think that's where we're trying to head, and I think that only happens when we're talking together and making sure that we are consistent in some ways, which is why our first discussion of the night is such a positive one for the region. So I want to make sure that this is the direction that the rest of the region is headed in, because I wouldn't want to do something that we've got pods that are hanging from a rail and everyone else is traveling along one, for instance, something like that. I don't know that gets us very far.
That makes very good sense. Let me mention something that the other council members would remember, that I came to the College Park mayor and city council before, but that was before I found out that the head of that had been in prison and changed his name and all kind of stuff, and I resigned immediately. But this is the same type of concept, except it's realistic. It has a patent on it. The other one didn't. And JPOD said they were infringing on his patent, but it's the same concept. And I had, at that time, everybody I met with, the cities and the counties, about 16 of them, region of kind of everything in South Metro had approved it. And I'm talking, and that starts from, and going away down from Macon, Bibb County, all the way up through Henry County, Rockdale, DeKalb, Hapeville, all of those had already been on board with the same thing. And I asked each one of them, including College Park, just to sit tight, because I thought the concept was phenomenal and that somebody would come up with the same kind of plan. And they all agreed and they have set. But we're starting with College Park because we think that's the ideal place to start.
All right.
Well, JT, I would agree that you guys had a lot of MOUs signed for the previous project, which when we actually went out and kicked the tires, there was a bit of vaporware there too. But but I also agree with the mayor. As I recall, and I can't swear to this, as I recall, I think Gerald was on board with that. I don't want to swear to it. I wish Gerald were here.
Yeah.
But I do totally agree with the mayor that we are very much in a partnership with the CID.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that it fits in with this overall metro plan that's being proposed.
The conceptual vision for transit that they sent out a couple of weeks ago does not look like JPODs. And Gerald sent that to me
Yes. I
back in May.
Yeah. And there's a video on that.
Mhm.
And Gerald and I've talked about that. That's a bus. That's a 15 to 20 passenger bus. It won't work. And he agrees with that. But that was somebody that did with that. Gerald has asked me to be on a committee of 3 of us to meet with various governmental officials and state government. And I'm working with Gerald directly. And so some of y'all should talk to Gerald about it.
But Gerald is here.
Oh, well, good.
Is he still here?
He just
Yes,
popped up on the screen.
Okay.
I stepped away and I came back to my computer. I apologize for that.
Hello,
Your
sir.
ears were burning, Gerald.
Gerald, they wanted to be sure that our proposal for the JPODs wouldn't be something to be contrary to something that you and the people in the region would be opposed to.
The concept falls in the category of personal rapid transit.
Right.
So we are embracing that concept 100%. What we are being very cautious to do is to align ourselves with any vendor yet. And that's where we want to look at all the vendors to determine which vendor would be appropriate to build a demonstration system and then conduct a study to look at a full-blown system. So that's where we are now in terms of our exploring personal rapid transit. I met most of the vendors, and at this point, I think we want to be very cautious before we align ourselves with one vendor, before we get all the information that we need to determine if this is the solution that we want to implement it in our region around the airport. But I would agree with JT. He and I have spoken about this on a number of occasions. I believe that the personal rapid transit concept is certainly a feasible solution, not only for our local jurisdictions, but for a larger region. And what we want to do is to make sure that we give some time to consider all the vendors. I don't know if any of you have had a chance, if all of you have had a chance to see a video that we put out regarding this about a month or so ago.
I was just talking about it and how it does not look like JPODs.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to mention is that was not our endorsement of any implementation. It was simply to show an example of a system that has been in operation since 2011 at the Heathrow Airport. But there are a couple of companies that has an implementation that shows a suspended pod. That was not us embracing one over the other. That was simply for us to show a system that is already in operation and has been in operation now going on 8 or 9 years. I encourage College Park to continue to explore this, and I trust the leadership that JT brings to the table, but I would be very cautious before I would commit to one vendor yet.
Mr. McDowell, is it the plan of, got a lot of feedback there. Is it the plan of the CIDs to, after investigation, to come around to one vendor or one concept in regard to PRT?
Yes.
All right. How long do you think that'll take the CIDs to fully explore?
21. We're looking to have that decision made in 2021.
Gerald, would you be opposed if the city of College Park enters into an MOU with Georgia Mobility?
Are you naming a particular vendor? Are you naming J-PODs in this MOU?
Yes.
I would not name a vendor. And if you're only working with one vendor at this point, I would caution you on that.
Yeah, well, what we have, I thought I mentioned it before, we had detected a number of vendors. We just feel like J-PODs is the best one out there and has this patent that's probably going to, well, at least the only one we know of that has a patent to do it with a tracked overhead. And at Heathrow, as you went up there with Chris and Thomas and others, and Chris told me about it, he came back. And it's just not something that probably is going to work in today's virus environment because it handles 15, it's a small bus rather than a pod, a lot more than just 6 people.
I think this might be a conversation that kind of spins off between you and Mr. McDowell.
Sure.
In regard to this particular issue, does anyone else on council have any other questions or comments?
No, I've got mine answered. I've said what I need to say.
Okay. All right. Well, then at this point, it is 7:14. We still have some more items to discuss in executive session. So let's see what we can do in the next 16 minutes. I want to thank everyone from Georgia Mobility for their presentation this evening. And we will head back into executive session unless there's anything else that we need to handle in workshop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Council.
All righty. Gentlemen, see you
want a motion,
over.
Mayor?
Need a motion,
Yeah,
Mayor.
yeah, sorry.
I move that we
Thank
move
you.
into executive session for real estate, personnel, and litigation.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I think that was unanimous. Were there any any no's or abstentions? All right. Hearing none, we'll go into executive session at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chevalier.